So, Berto, I have some emails that I thought we would read and answer on the podcast and see if anything of interest comes out of either one or both of our faces. What do you say, Umberto?
That sounds like a fabulous notion.
This is the Psychology in Seattle podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist, and I'm also a professor. Who are you, Berto?
My name is Umberto Castañeda, and I make screensavers for Windows 95.
My goal for the latter part of 2020 is to pronounce your name in 15 different ways in every episode.
That's a valiant goal.
So this first one is from Ramona from Ontario. She asks, is it wrong to go through someone's phone or check their browsing history? Does this violate their personal privacy? Umberto, what do you think?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, undoubtedly. Basically, like, I'm not saying that it is wrong to have, concern that maybe someone's lying to you or whatever. Of course, if you feel bad or if you feel like you can't trust someone, that's a problem. You should definitely address that. But in my opinion, the way to address that is directly to have a conversation with that person. And if you still have reason for doubt, maybe you should make a change. But like breaking into people's stuff and spying, I mean, unless this was like some sort of, you fear someone's life is in danger and you're a cop and you know what you're doing or something, like, no.
Right. Yeah. The answer is yes. It's wrong under most circumstances. Let's analyze what moral behavior is. What would you say is the difference between moral and immoral behavior, Roberto?
In general or in this? Yeah. I think morality is clearly not a set in stone for all time thing. I mean, ideally it would be, but clearly it's not if we look at history. What I do think is there are generally accepted do's and don'ts in our society. You can look at what's law as a rough guideline. It certainly will tell you things like, well, murder seems to be wrong, theft seems to be wrong. But I think it extends beyond laws. There is a sort of an understood superset of things that you should do and should not do as part of what we feel is moral. I think if what you're doing infringes on another person's freedom or rights or self-determination or worse, if it causes them pain and things like that, you're probably heading in the wrong moral direction.
Right. Moral behavior is immoral behavior is purposely harming other people. It's just that simple. Immoral behavior is harm, and moral behavior is the non-harming, purposefully harming other people.
Makes sense.
And harm, in this instance, if you were to break into someone's phone and look through their messages or without them knowing, check their browsing history, as Berto says, this is very hurtful. It's a betrayal. It's lying by omission. It's an invasion. It feels bad. Do unto others. Would you like people to hack into your phone and look at everything that you've been doing? Right. Now, as Berto also says, there are exceptions. Like if a child is in trouble, for example, you might want to break into your child's phone or even your spouse's phone potentially if that's necessary for safety or something. Or if you just have an arrangement with your spouse that you don't really mind that the other person rifles through your phone. I mean, a lot of couples, they're just an open book like that. I feel like me and my wife have an arrangement. We haven't really spoken explicitly about that, but there are times when I just hand her my phone and she just walks away with it because she has to get into something, and the phone's gone for an hour. She could rifle through whatever she wants to. I don't care.
Right.
I don't think she does, but in that instance, it wouldn't be weird, I guess, if she rifled through some stuff. I mean, I guess it would be a little bit of a surprise to me, but I wouldn't mind, and I'm guessing she would think I wouldn't mind. Anyway, the point is that some couples have an arrangement. So,
yeah, I think it's similar to like porn in a way, like the whole porn thing, where it's like, is it wrong to look at porn if you're in a relationship? Well, not in general, but you might have an agreement where you've agreed that you wouldn't look at porn or something, which may not be great, but if that's your agreement and then you violate that agreement. So similarly, if you either haven't discussed it or you've explicitly discussed that there should be separation in those cases, So I think it really comes down to that intention, like you were alluding to. If the intention is, I know that I'm doing something I'm not supposed to be doing, but I'm trying to get information from this person. Now you might, you were saying do harm. In this case, it's weird because you might be in a situation where you're like, well, I'm not trying to harm them. It's just I think they're cheating on me or something.
But it's harmful.
Sure.
But it's harmful to the other person. If the other person found out, or even if they didn't find out, it's an invasion of their privacy. It is harm. People can make excuses and they could say, well, the other person deserved it. But have a jury of your peers make that decision. I'm guessing that most people would say, no, just because you suspect your partner is cheating on you, that doesn't justify that kind of invasion of privacy. Ramona in Ontario says, how do you quell suspicion? Okay, now we're getting to the heart of the matter. Berto, what do you think? So if you
suspicion?
If you don't break into their phone, how do you quell suspicion?
Yeah. Right. Okay, so that's a tough one because if you're suspicious, suspicion is, in my opinion, a symptom on top of other stuff. So I don't think you start with suspicion, it's like things have been happening and now you got suspicions. I feel that it's hard, but open communication, it's hard for open communication to steer you in a bad direction. So bring it up. Bring it up in a how it makes you feel. What is it? What's happening to you? So instead of like, I think you're lying to me. I think you're cheating on me, right? You could say, I've been feeling insecure lately, or I've been feeling a little afraid that our relationship might be at risk because you seem to avoid me after dinner, or every time I go to talk to you, you seem to be having a conversation on your phone and then you look away, and so I'm feeling a little afraid. I'm making stuff up, of course, but the idea is to put it frame it in a way of how is it affecting you, and then see if the person opens up. And then you got to gauge what happens. Like if the person opens up and says, oh, well, I'm not doing that. I'm playing a game and I was embarrassed that I wasn't supposed to be playing a game, whatever, right? But if they're very defensive and they're like, you shouldn't be, blah, blah, you might start gauging, is this working out for you, right? And maybe it's not one conversation, but it's a series of conversations.
Yeah. So to just piggyback on a lot of the things Berto was saying here is it has to do with building trust, and it takes time. It has to do with attachment security that you build over time through communication, how does anyone know if their spouse is cheating on them or not? How does anyone quell suspicion? I suppose every partner in every relationship has moments of suspicion. How do you quell that? There's this notion out there for people who have the impulse to break into people's phones that somehow if I have eyes on the person all the time, or I hire a private eye, then that'll solve things. And as Berto was saying, the suspicion is a symptom. So let's say you're just really suspicious that your spouse is cheating on you, and you're worried about that all the time. Well, let's say that God comes down from heaven and says, I will personally have an angel watching your husband 24/7, and they will give you a report. And this angel can't lie by law, and you'll find out. Well, is that going to fix your relationship? Probably not. The fact that you are suspicious of your spouse is probably a symptom of the fact that you don't feel attachment security with that person, and you might not have ever felt attachment security throughout your life. So it takes time building trust, knowing your attachment wounds, and just accepting the fact that you'll never know because there isn't an angel from God. And even if you did break into someone's phone, your spouse could have a different phone, or they could delete all the messages, or they could use some secret email account that they only use at work or something. I mean, there's no way in the modern world really to know for sure that your spouse isn't at the very least having a emotional affair with someone. So the compulsion and the impulse to somehow investigate as a way of managing your feelings of insecurity is usually self-destructive or at the very least just doesn't work. The other thing is to heal from past wounds. If you have a lifetime of attachment insecurity, then healing from your past wounds might help you in your current relationship. Just to get a little specific about this, you are in a relationship, things have been a little rocky over time, you're starting to suspect your partner, you really want to know if your partner is cheating on you, and you just really just don't know what to do. Well, where do you begin? Well, begin by taking an inventory of the relationship status in general. Is the relationship going well? Do you feel like your partner loves you? The big thing here is go to couples therapy, honestly, and just start sifting through all the foundational reasons as to why there is attachment insecurity. Now, it's possible that your spouse actually is cheating on you. Just because we're framing it as if you shouldn't invade someone's space, that doesn't mean that your suspicion isn't justified. I mean, there's a lot of cheating going on in the world, so it wouldn't be unheard of that suspicion, if there's smoke, there's fire, kind of a thing. It could be. But the thing that I always tell clients, because this is my experience, is if cheating is happening, you'll eventually find out. And usually people that are worrying about infidelity, they're usually in a long-term relationship. So giving it another couple of years isn't necessarily the end of the world. And that's usually what I tell people, because I've worked with clients who are obsessively worried about their partner cheating. They've been cheated on, so they worry that their partner is going to do it again, which is normal. And they're really suffering day in and day out. And they come into session and we talk about it, and I validate it. There's nothing strange about worrying about something that's happened in the past, particularly in that current relationship. But the cognitive choices to say like, well, the solution is I have to find out, or I have to read her diary, or even though she doesn't want me to, or I have to hire a private investigator, or I have to buy a spy device to, have a camera in her car or something. These are impulses that people have, and it's not usually the path to wellness, let's just say. And the other thing, the last thing I'll say is that, and I kind of said this earlier, is that none of us know if our spouse isn't cheating on us. Like me and my wife, I would say, have a pretty good relationship. And at no point does either one of us absolutely know that the other person isn't cheating, or has cheated.
COVID helps, though.
Yeah. Well, there's just no way to know in the normal sort of living, outside of pandemic. And that's an anxiety that is just there. And how do you deal with that? Well, you build a bond. One, because the more bond you feel with your spouse, the less you are concerned about that. The worries just kind of go away. The other thing is the bigger bond, the better bond you have with your spouse, the less likely they're going to cheat on you, because they don't want to risk that bond, and they don't have any reason to go outside of your bond to get their needs met. So that's what I'll say about that. Now, the last thing I'll say is that cheating is awful, and being cheated on is awful. And I know how much that can hurt, and I know why people are concerned about it. It's not like it's weird to be concerned about it, but to just simply say, well, I'm just going to invade their privacy as a way of managing that usually is short-sighted. Sorry for interrupting.
That makes sense. No, that's fine. I just was going to promote my fail-safe method for finding out if someone's cheating on you. I offer online courses. It's called the STD method. The S stands for surveillance, the T for transmittable diseases, and the D for DNA. So first, you install cameras, microphones everywhere. You implant a chip while they're sleeping. Second, you check yourself every week for STDs. And third, when the baby is born, you check it for DNA. It never fails me.
Eventually, cameras and electronics will be nano, and you could just put a camera on their genitals, and then you could just see if anything's there. All right, this next email is from someone about crying men. They say, is it normal that some people never cry? My husband never cries, not even when his parents died, not even when we separated. Never does he cry. And I know that society tells boys to toughen up and not cry, but he never cries. Berto, is it normal that men don't cry?
Oh, you and I have gone down this road before. We've talked about this for sure. I don't think it's normal, quote unquote. I think it is unfortunately common. I totally agree. I was raised that way. And I mean, literally, like a lot of times you and I get in debates about, nature versus nurture, and where, like how much is society telling people how they should or shouldn't be. And I get that. But I'm talking about my dad literally saying to me, being angry at me, like, stop crying. Why are you crying? You got to stop crying right now. Like, imbuing in my head, like crying is not a thing we do.
Even though he's a psychiatrist.
Even though he's a child psychiatrist, even. It's crazy, dude. Now, I don't remember the context. Maybe in that context, the world was going to end if I kept crying or something. Who knows? But all I know is I have those memories. I have those memories of being the, and he's like, don't you cry. I'm like, and by the way, he never hit me. So it wasn't even like I was scared of him hitting me. It was just this mandate, like, you will not cry. Okay, so that's what I grew up with. So sure enough, in my mind, both implicitly and explicitly, you don't cry as a guy. Like, that's for little babies, for little girls.
Yeah, and it's massively societal too. So to answer your question, yeah, it's normal that some people don't cry. It's not healthy. It is like very much not healthy. And people who are socialized this way, and some non-men are socialized this way as well, it's potentially a lifetime of reprogramming yourself, reprogramming essentially your autonomic responses, because it's not like you can, for the most part, force yourself to cry or not cry. It's something that you learn over time how to do. I remember the exact moment that I learned how to not cry. I was young and I would cry normally, like, I was 5, 6, 7 years old. I would cry normally, and I don't remember worrying about that much. But as I went through grade school, I started noticing that it was wrong to cry, and that respectable boys my age they never cried. In fact, I had a best friend, Greg, who was just so tough, and he would frequently injure himself because, you're always jumping off of trees and taking jumps off your bike.
Right.
And I only saw him cry once, and we were riding a skateboard down this really long hill, straight long hill, both of us on the same skateboard, and he was sitting in front of me. And we started getting out of control, so I bailed, and I totally ripped up my my leg. But he and we didn't realize that. I don't know why, but at the bottom of the hill, it just goes into the woods. So there's nowhere to stop, So toward the bottom of the hill, we're moving fast. I mean, just imagine two young boys on a skateboard, just straight down the hill for probably what would amount to like a couple blocks. Like, you can get moving pretty fast. Anyway, he put his hands down to stop himself, and he ran over his own hand and like just tore up the backside of one of his hands. And it wasn't crying, it was like screaming. It was just
This was a skateboard?
Yeah. Oh. And anyway, but beyond that, he never cried. One time he was on my back. My dad was our soccer coach, and we were doing wind sprints, and we were doing piggyback wind sprints. And so he was, and since I was a lot bigger than he was on my back, and we were inside, we were in a basketball court, and I tripped, and his chin hit the court so hard that it split open to the bone on his chin, and he didn't cry.
Oh my God.
And I just remember thinking he was the coolest guy. And so in the 6th grade, we were playing, in PE, we're playing like softball or something. We had those big red balls, those big red rubber balls.
TMI.
And we used a bat to hit him. So it was kind of like kickball, but with a bat, if that makes any sense. So someone is at bat in front of me, and they hit the ball, and it's so I grew up playing baseball, and one of the classic skills you learn is when you hit the ball, what do you do with the bat? Because bats are...
You throw it at the pitcher.
Right. Bats are weapons, right? So there's a technique when you take a swing, you connect. There's a way of setting off running for space while dropping the bat. There's just this, but you got to get it out of your way. So it's usually just kind of a little bit of a toss, but very light toss to your side.
Oh, yeah.
What you definitely don't want to do is fling it away from you. You don't hit the ball. You don't hit the ball and just like fling it as hard as you can away from you because you're so excited you hit the ball, because you don't know where that thing's going to land. You know what I mean?
Right.
So the guy in front of me, who I remember, he was just like a spaz. He hits the ball and he flings it behind him. So
my God.
So he doesn't fling it. Usually you would fling it down, as you're running to the right, as you're heading to first base. He flung it directly behind him, and I'm right behind, 10 yards behind him. And I see the bat flying through the air, twirling, and it hit me in the knees, but it didn't hurt that bad. What it was so shocking and scary in slow-mo to see this bat just flying through the air towards me, and I couldn't get out of the way. Hits me in the legs, and I just start crying. And
oh my gosh! Yeah.
And I'm in the 6th grade, and I'm embarrassed, right? Because one, I play baseball, and I consider myself to be a little jock. So to be crying on the baseball field is rough. 2, I'm not just in front of my teammates or something like this. I'm in front of like all the girls.
Oh no!
Right? There's all the girls in class, and I'm crying, and I'm upset because I'm not hurt. I'm like, why am I crying? It doesn't even hurt. No. It doesn't even hurt that bad. So I kind of, skulk away, and some girls follow me, and I'm like, I just want to be alone right now. I head to the top of this hill, and I'm sitting there, and there's 3 girls like consoling me,
Oh my God.
And I'm sitting there, and I'm like, this is never happening again. I cannot let this happen ever again, because I had no control over the crying. It just happened as an automatic response. And so from then on, whenever I had that, that feeling when you start to feel like you're going to tear up and cry, I would transfer it into anger. I would mutate it into anger. And I don't know how I figured this out, but it worked, man. I probably did that over the next 50 times I almost cried. And from that point forward, I never had another tear. Like, I could be as sad and as, distraught and distressed and traumatized. And there were moments, in high school when emotionally things weren't going well for me. And I just had no tears, because when I would feel the tears coming on, I'd clench my fists and I'd make an angry face and I'd be like, no. Then I enter into my 20s and I think, something's wrong here. Like, I haven't cried in 10 years. There's something that can't be healthy. And so I set off to cry, and ever so slowly, when there would be moments when I thought I might cry, I would actually try to push the tears out, if that makes any sense. And I'd really focus on the sadness feeling in my chest. And this took probably, 3 or 4 years before I could actually have a full-on crying moment. And the first time I really remember going, wow, I fixed myself, was I was watching Mulan, the cartoon, the Disney cartoon. And that movie isn't even particularly a tearjerker.
Sure.
But because it was an Asian Disney cartoon, and as an Asian American, it just felt so wonderful to have my people represented in the Disney world, that even things that were just kind of like funny, I would cry.
Did you cry during "I'll make a man out of you"?
Probably. I would cry when Eddie Murphy, the dragon, was it Eddie Murphy? Wasn't he the dragon? Yeah. It's funny because Eddie Murphy was also the donkey in Shrek. But anyway, I was crying throughout that movie. I remember thinking, I've been bawling 70% of this movie, which is just kind of weird, right? And then from that point forward, I feel like I have a pretty healthy tear response, to the point now where last night I'm watching World of Dance with my wife, and just seeing wonderful dancers putting their heart into it makes me want to cry, you know? So
Yeah, a little too far the other direction.
no, I think it's good. I don't think it's bad in the least. I wish I cried more often. I wish I felt more comfortable to cry in front of other people, because I guess that's kind of my next hurdle or something. So, so it's possible that the listener who emailed in that your husband never cries, that your husband learned when he was young that he needed to clamp down on his tears, and he succeeded, and he's never been able to turn that around. For people to turn that around, they have to become extremely enlightened, which is not usually possible in our culture. He has to have support. He has to feel masculine. He has to have a role model. He has to value his emotions. He has to be in touch with his emotions. He has to feel comfortable around other people. So that's a tall order to ask in our massively sexist society. And sexism meaning that it's oppressive gender-wise towards everyone, including men.
I mean, dude, I went through a similar journey as you, except sort of, I don't know, even more repressed, I guess, because, I mean, I mentioned what my dad would say to me, but essentially, I don't remember ever crying at school. Like, I'm sure it must have happened when I was really little. I don't remember the time. And it worse even because as I grew up, and I got hurt quite a bit, I don't remember even having to fight to suppress the crying and turn it into anger. It just didn't happen. And then what ended up happening is later on, like around 30 or something, under the influence of alcohol and with underlying undealt with depression and a whole bunch of other stuff, oh, the tears did flow. Oh, I had a few where it was uncontrollable. I didn't even know what was happening to me. I mean, I knew I was crying, but I didn't know why. I was like uncontrollable sobbing for like, I don't know, 45 minutes. Like,
yeah, that's what I've seen. That's what I've seen in the men that I've worked with. And I'm glad you went through that. I'm sorry that it hurt during the time,
yeah.
but it was cathartic in that way. And I've worked with men clients, and they come to therapy and they've had this lifetime of this kind of emotional oppression. And the first few times they cry, yeah, it's the way you describe it. It's not just crying. It like is coming from the depths where the Balrog lives, and you know, thou shalt not pass. And then finally it does pass, and it just comes out like an explosion of suffering and difficulty. So,
do you know one of the first times that I had one of these episodes? And actually that one was, I was sober, stone cold sober. It was when Tiger Lily, my cat, when I found out.
Yeah.
I was in LA and I got the call, and I was like, what? And I went into I just like broke down. I was screaming, crying uncontrollably. And I didn't react that way when my grandma died, which was years earlier.
Well, when your grandma died, she had been declining mentally for a long time. She was a lot older. Yeah. It was expected. Tiger Lily got run over by a car and
she was young
and lived a while after that. Yeah. So that is heartbreaking, you know, and just awful. Okay, well, let's take a deep breath and let's take a break. When we get back, let's talk about abusive gamer culture. What do you say?
Let's do it.
All right, Berto, we're back from the break. If you were the sort of person who was going to break into your wife's phone to check up on her because you worry that she's cheating on you, and you're trying to convince her, or I don't know who you're trying to convince, but you're trying to convince someone to become a patron of the podcast, what would you sound like?
Oh, I'm trying to convince the person that she's cheating with me on.
Oh, okay.
Cheating with.
Yeah, so you're looking through her phone clandestinely.
All right, I got it. Like, hello. You don't know me, but I guess now I know you. I found your name and number in my wife's little text message stream, and I see all the dirty little things you say to each other. But guess what? I'm not even that pissed, because if you become a patron of my podcast, then you can show me that all of this was worth it. So what are you going to do? Be a dirty little schemer or a little dirty schemer patron?
Someone should make like a supercut of all the different improv moments you've made. Yeah. So every time someone becomes a patron, we get an email, and it warms our hearts that you took the leap. If you haven't done that yet, I encourage you to do it. It doesn't, it's not that costly per month, and it is the wind beneath our wings, both emotionally, but also practically. We can only dedicate the amount of time we do to this podcast because of your support. If we didn't have your support, we would have to, have regular full-time day jobs that...
all sorts of random jobs all over the place to try to support ourselves.
Yeah. All right, so patron Melinda from Europe. She hails from Europe. She says, I don't know if you've heard about this, but in the gaming industry, the girls are coming forward with their experiences with sexual abuse and predatory behavior from other gamers. And I just want to ask you if you have any experience on this matter, because I'd like to hear your words on it. There are a lot of stories going around. I think it's a much bigger problem because a lot of men don't understand the basic issues. End of email. Berto, as a gamer and as someone who has worked in the gaming online industry, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, man, this is insidious. There are levels, of course. So I think at the upper level, there is just the fact that traditionally the games world has been a male-dominated industry. Males have made the majority of the games. They've made them with male themes and all these things. And hey, I've enjoyed the hell out of it. But then there's also the industry itself, which is, again, traditionally been very male-dominated. Most males are the ones working in there and stuff like that. Now, I worked in this industry a long time ago, and when I started, it was an old boys club for sure. Like everything from the events, like the morale events, the big conventions, all these things. And so I grew up basically seeing that all around me, and I was just as big a part of the problem. It was a boys club, and so we would crack inappropriate jokes all over the place, and things like that. And no one knew that it was wrong, or at least no one my age knew it was wrong. It was just how it was. But then it's gotten even more insidious, I think, or maybe it was always there, but it's just like surfaced more. Because you'll have all the folks like the 4chan level of insidiousness, where there is the men's rights angle, and then there's the kind of language used to insult and harass people online that are like females playing, or even people who are not females but are like maybe being sympathetic to female gamers. It is crazy. It is very vindictive, very insidious, very insulting. And I think that it's not inviting. It's not inviting at all. The flip side is that I think that there are boys right now playing that are not bad people, right? So like, how do we get to those, to the majority, the vast majority of boys, and sort of short circuit them from becoming abusive in that sense. And by the way, it's abusive certainly to the female population, but dude, it's abusive also in general. Like, they abuse each other. It's a level of harassment and vindictiveness, and it's terrible. This is why I stopped playing online, because it's just, you can't have just like a normal multiplayer game or something without like the worst racist, just like horrible it's not a conversation, it's attacks constantly. I love trash talking. I love trash talking. But like fun trash talking, Like, who taught you to shoot the ball, Kirk? My grandma, like stuff like this. And I don't know, this stuff gets like crosses every single line.
Yeah. So in case people don't know, the behavior that is happening online in these communities are extreme. It's not just even random racist comments through a headset as you're playing, Counter-Strike or something. It's literally threats of sexual assault, actual harassment, actual stalking, grooming minors, because a lot of young people obviously play online games, and there are predators who are trying to abuse and harm these young people. Extremely hateful, sexist comments against women, constant comments about women's bodies, etc. Because if someone is playing, on Twitch or something, there's every 10th comment is like, oh, look, show me your boobs, or some, derogatory comment like, oh, you're fat, or just, whereas men get almost none of that. A male on Twitch could probably play for a couple weeks and get no comments about his body. A woman on Twitch is where, if you don't know, it's where you play video games live and people watch you play video games, and they often can see you, sitting in the chair as you're playing video games. And anyway, so it can just be a constant problem, and it can actually result in physical sexual assault that actually happens in person. It's not just a bunch of comments and that sort of thing. So the reasons, why would this happen? Well, as some of you know, Berto and I have been talking about the incel community, the MGTOW community, the pickup artist community, the red pill community. There are all these communities online that claim to be extremely different, even though I find them to be very similar. Like, whenever I talk about these sorts of things, there's always some YouTube commenter that, this guy thinks incel is the same as MGTOW. He's an idiot. It's just like, yeah, there might be some slight differences, but they all share the same philosophy if you, at least look at them from a little bit of a distance. Anyway, these communities, if you don't know, these are communities mainly of men, but there are women in the communities too, who are, they'll say that they've been rejected by women, and they are looking for a community, and they're looking for reasons as to why this is happening. And these echo chambers will purport ideas that feminism is the problem, that women know that they can control men through their bodies, that women are purposefully rejecting men and playing them like a fiddle and using their sexuality as a power struggle against the male gender. And the only way you're going to be able to be happy and not a cuck is to fight back with anger and hate and manipulation, or going your own way, as they say. And MGTOW is, men going their own way, meaning that you're just like, I'm going to go my own way. Now, at some of the discourse is fine. It's like, I'm having a really hard time dating, and I don't know what to do, and I'm looking for a community of people to hang out with and be friends with, because I don't want to date anymore. No problem with that. If that's what you're at, then totally fine. Same for women. If women are like, I'm done with men, I don't want to date anymore, I want to just become celibate, or maybe I'll try, becoming a lesbian. Let's see what happens. Nothing wrong with that. It's a sad result of difficulty in relationships, but there's nothing immoral about it. There is something immoral about these groups. And so the gamer community and the incel community, there's a pretty big overlap, because when you're a guy and you're heterosexual and you're at home a lot, and you have a hard time socializing, and you have a hard time getting your attachment needs, sexual needs, romantic needs met, then you look for something to do. And one of the things that is readily available from pretty much the day you turn 12 years old is the gaming community. You can play games. There's a whole world you can enter. There's success and achievement and community and support. And so these groups kind of bleed into each other. Have you experienced that, Berto?
Yeah. So I've mentioned before that I would spend a lot of time 12 years ago, maybe, in some of these online forums like 4chan and NeoGAF and a few other places. I think what started off as like small fringes started infecting like viruses, other larger pools of the communities. Look, a perfect example of this is this QAnon unbelievableness. This started as a post on 4chan like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I don't know, and started insidiously growing like a virus to the point that now there are Congress people that support this and like retired military. Like it's unbelievable. But similarly, so it starts with these little people and they get some like micro notoriety within these little posting groups. But then that makes it, because what happens is that something like 4chan appeals to folks that are a little on the fringe because there's a cool factor to it to them. They're like, oh, you know, the more popular posters on these kinds of Reddits or 4chans and things, they are cool people because they can come up with funny sayings or funny memes or really clever threads. And as a result, they start looking up to them. And so one of those posters will put something about the reality of how women are like ridiculous or inferior or should not play sports or are terrible gamers. Or even worse, what starts happening is they'll disguise things that at first might sound like a valid discussion to have, but they'll inject all their actual misogyny. So, for example, it might be, they'll use someone like a red herring, like someone that's actually coming out and saying that they hate men and they hate all male gamers or something. And they'll make it sound like this is abusive towards men and blah, blah. But then they'll go ahead and inject all the actual misogyny into that. Same thing happens with racists too. They'll do something like, look at all the violence in the city streets of Chicago. Shouldn't we be talking about that? But then what they're not saying, but they're implying is like, well, because there's something wrong with those people. It's probably genetic and we should, like all these things.
Right.
And that's what happens. And then it spreads. And then now you got like people that are not even in those forums that are playing the games. And they're just casually accepting these realities, casually throwing the N-word left and right as they're playing, casually saying like, oh, are you a girl? You're playing like a girl, like all these things. And it's sad and it's really hard to combat because you seem uncool. We are uncool by pointing these things out. We are not with it. We're not red-pilled. We are the establishment. We are the this. We are the that.
Right.
We're cucks.
Right. If you want to be accepted, then you have to just go along with it because they have established themselves. Once the fringe becomes the main, there are these fringe communities where the fringe idea becomes the mainstream. You know, if you were just to walk around with the average group of men and start saying cuck and feminism is the reason why I can't get laid and all these kinds of things, most men would be like, dude, what? Like even among non-enlightened men, they would just say like, wow, like, couldn't it just be that you've just struck out a few times, or maybe you're not approaching women in a way that they want, even unenlightened men will look askance at that. But in these little pockets, it's a social psychology phenomenon. And the other aspect that I'll sort of put into here is that, and this has been my central thesis that I've developed as I've interacted not only with Incel, MGTOW, Red Pill, pickup artist people online, but also as clients. I've had some of these men as clients, and this thesis has always panned out, which is that you have guys who, for whatever reason, it's hard for them to get their romantic needs met. Either they are awkward. Some of them are awkward. Some of them aren't, though. Some of them aren't awkward. Maybe they just had bad luck. Maybe they circumstances, or who knows. Just something happens where they're 25 and they look back on their romantic life and they just think it's just been a total train wreck. And they're very hurt and they're very lonely and they don't know what to do. And when they were 18, they reached out to the internet for help. When they were 22, they reached out to their friends. When they were 23, they decided to go online and date. But by the time they're 25 or by the time they're 30, they've done all the things that they can find, and they've yet to go to therapy, I'll say.
Yeah.
But they've done all the things, and they've turned over every rock, and they have nowhere to go, and they eventually find themselves in one of these communities, the incel, MGTOW, et cetera, communities online. And these communities will say things like, it's not your fault. The fact that you have been rejected, it's not because of a lack of social skills. It's not because you don't dress right or that you're uncool. It's because society has been teaching women to control you. It's because feminism is ruining women's minds. It's because women are basically born narcissistic and self-entitled B-words. And, and at first you're like, well, I don't know. But I feel better after absorbing these notions, because it releases me from the massive amounts of shame that I feel, which is another factor here. When, we look at incel and MGTOW and we ridicule them, right? As a mainstream society, we look at those people, we're just like, what's wrong with you? But we are the reason why they went there, because we shamed them to begin with for not getting the girl. Yep. We do not accept men in our society who cannot get the girl. James Bond always gets the girl, right?
And ironically, James Bond gets the girl in the ways that confirm the theories from these groups.
Quill in the Marvel universe always gets the girl. Iron Man always gets the girl. These heroes, they don't struggle. They always get the girl. And if you can't get, the villains are often the guys who can't get the girl, right? These are the guys who have a hard, Kylo Ren can't get the girl. He has troubles. So there's all these messages that we give. And so we're to blame as a society for shaming these people so that they feel like they need to go to a group like this to get a shred of self-esteem, because there's nowhere else for them to turn. And these groups absolutely do provide that. They give an explanation. They say it's not your fault. And they provide a community, and they give you a way out. Like if you want to use the pickup artist community, here's what you do. You neg women, and you have a weird necklace and you do all these things. And I will say that I've had clients who actually worked with the pickup artist community, and part of their therapy was actually enhanced by the fact that the pickup artist community, I had this one guy who the pickup artist community actually, at a fee, would bring him into society and actually make him walk up to women and talk to them. Through exposure therapy, he eventually just became accustomed to that, and his self-esteem blossomed and his social life blossomed. And so these communities aren't all toxic, you know what I mean? But they definitely have toxic ideas in them. Right. So the other... go ahead.
Oh, sorry. It's similar to... And in fact, there's this weird crossover with like the Jordan Peterson followers, because, a lot of what he's doing is he's telling young men, listen, there is a hierarchy in nature. It's embedded in our DNA, and you got to understand the hierarchy, but you got to clean your room. You got to get yourself out there, get your life in order. And that's how you're, blah, blah, blah. But, and so like if it stopped there, okay, that sounds reasonable. Get my life in order, all these things. But then hidden in there are all these little packets of hidden information that net out to like, and yes, men are in charge. And yes, women should be in this kind of role, not this kind of role. And essentially you have to be an alpha, because if you like all that stuff, it's like just like the whole smuggling, they coined the thing, smuggling Jesus in debates between atheists. And in this case, they're smuggling the misogyny. They're smuggling misogyny in the arguments.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. Yeah. Because it sounds good, right? If you don't have anyone else to influence you, of which there's hardly any positive masculine influences in our society, then you're just like, well, it sounds good. They'll say, what do women always say? Well, they want men to take control. They want men to be confident. They want men to be decisive. Women don't want a wet rag. And you can come up with several examples inside. You could just walk up to a woman on the street and say, like, even a feminist, you could walk up to her on the street and say, if she's heterosexual, do you want to be with a husband who is a wet rag and can't make decisions? She'll be like, no, I want him to be decisive.
Right.
So it plays into this toxic masculinity notion of alpha, meaning that the man is supposed to be in control. But what do we mean by that? So in a certain way, in a misogynistic way, it means you need to establish power over the woman. She needs to be less powerful than you. And you need to be hyper-focused on that. And any hint of, emasculation from her, which could literally just be her complaining about the way you treat her, it has to be put down. You cannot listen to that. You cannot give into that, because that is a cuck. And women, they don't want you to be that way anyway. It's a test to see if you're an alpha or a beta. And I find that these communities are obsessed with this notion of alpha and beta.
Yeah, totally.
Which I'm just going to say, in my 49 years on this planet, I've never thought about that. I have never.
That's because you're an alpha.
Maybe. But, in terms of their definition, I've never thought, at this party, I haven't said many things yet. Oh my God, I'm being baited by these alphas. Like I've never thought that. I've never cared. What is the difference? Like, it's such a hyper weird focus on something that no one else cares about. Now, to finish my thought, is there is something that is maybe useful, which is, when you walk up to a woman on the street and you say, like, do you want a decisive person? Then she's going to say, yes, I don't want a wishy-washy partner. But no one wants a wishy-washy partner. A man doesn't want a wishy-washy wife. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So because another way of looking at that is it doesn't have to do with sexism or misogyny or alpha, beta. It's just you want someone, when you ask them, what do you want for dinner? You want them to be in the world and say like, well, what do I want? You don't want someone that just is like, I don't know, what do you want? Because it doesn't feel good to be with someone who doesn't take up space, at least something, give me something about who you are, how you feel, what do you want? Interface with me somehow. No one wants someone who doesn't interface with you. So that has nothing to do with alpha beta. That has to do with a sense of self. It has to do with self-esteem. It has to do with effort and motivation. It has to do with trying to be in the world and enjoy life. That's what it has to do with, and that has nothing to do with gender. Anyway.
So I was going to say, look, I think it'd be bad policy to deny that the world and life works on curves. Meaning, if you go to a party, it is a fact that some individuals of either sex or orientation, all of the above, will be more attractive to more individuals. It's just the way the world works.
Yeah.
Now it's a curve, so it's not everyone, it's not 100%, it's not guaranteed, but it is a fact. So what ends up happening is you have observations of nature, but then you try to turn them into infallible final rules for your own personal experience. And I think that's where it falls down, because it's like you have no choice in life but to be an alpha. If you're not an alpha, it's the end of your life. And so then you go from like, well, sure, yes, some people are more attractive physically. Other people are more smart intellectually. Other people are this. Other people are this. Are you a good artist? You go from that nuance to here are some rules. And this is what happens when you apply geometric infallibility to life. You end up with plastic surgery. And when you're done with the plastic surgery, you look at the person, you're like, oh man, what have you done to yourself?
Well, that took a turn. I was with you until the plastic surgery bit.
because if you ask the plastic surgeon, what's all the stuff you did to this person? They'll give you all the measurements, and they'll all mathematically make sense. Oh, look, we now made this even. This is now symmetrical. This is like that. But when you look at the result, it looks plastic and artificial and like blah, blah. Similar to when you look at supermodels on the runway, right? Like if you ask, why did you choose these models the way they look? It's like, well, because these are the perfect proportions for modeling my clothing. But it's not going to translate one-to-one. If you ask everyone in the world, is this then the ultimate ideal of beauty to you? That's not going to translate to everyone. Like, for example, me, I tend to not prefer that look, both males and females. When I look at models that are the super gaunt, super skinny, super angular, I'm like, well, I guess that must model the clothes nicely. It's not my preference. But that's what happens if you try to reduce everything to mathematical formulas. And therefore, the way you land a woman is you go in with this many steps, you say the following line with this much volume, and you look at them at this point of that kind of approach to life is not workable, and it will depress you, and it'll fail ultimately.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's trying to find a solution to a very complicated problem. And as many of you know, I am doing a series of deep dives on loneliness, and this is actually part of it, that the MGTOW, incel, and part of the toxic culture and gamer world is due to loneliness. And we have a big problem with loneliness, and it's just getting worse. But anyway, so other reasons as to why. So I have a whole list of reasons here, and one of them is the MGTOW, incel, lonely, hurt male community online. So that's one influence. You know, if you're playing a lot of games to the point where you're playing, because like for me, I play a lot of video games, but I'm not in any gamer community, because to be in a gamer community, I have to make sure I log in at a regular rate. I have to make sure that I ask my friends to log in the same time I log in. I have to show up when other people are there, because then, you know, I can get to know these people.
It's a big commitment.
Yeah, and I just don't have that commitment, because I might play a video game like 2 or 3 times a week, and it's like from 10 p.m. till 10:20 p.m. and then I go to bed, you know? Right. So if you have the time, then in all likelihood, you're not doing anything else with your social life. And if you're not doing anything else with your social life, it's possible that you feel bad about not being able to meet any you know, romantic partners. And so the gamer community and the incel MGTOW community are, you know, attract the same sort of people. Anyway, so the other reason is that psychopaths and predators are in the world. And this is something that, as a clinician, I know, but I feel like the general public has a hard time pulling out of abstraction. We all understand, yeah, okay, there's psychopaths in the world, there's sexual predators in the world. I want to really make sure people understand that there are psychopathic, sadistic, and predatory individuals, millions upon millions of them, all over the world, who get off on harming other people in various different ways. They aren't just like mildly problematic with empathy. These people get tremendous pleasure from harming other people and have a drive to do it that is the same drive you have to have sex, or to have a good meal, or to play a good video game, or to hang out with your friends. They're potentially their only drive, or their primary drive, or one of their main drives, is they wake up in the morning and they think to themselves, how am I going to harm other people? And that's scary, but it's real. And it only takes a small, and these are very rare individuals, but when you have 7.5 billion effing people on the planet, we're talking about millions of individuals. Now, how can they get their rocks off? How can they get their pleasure in life? They can't walk down the street, because they're going to get punched in the face. They're going to go to prison. They're going to be ostracized. They're going to be flagged and documented and posted. And sometimes they end up doing that, and they have consequences. On the internet, there are no consequences. Mm-hmm. In fact, it's encouraged. Like Berto said, it's normalized to talk crap when you're playing Counter-Strike or, you know, Halo or whatever it is that you're playing against. It's normalized. It's normal trash talk. If you can't hang, get out of this, you know, server. This is not a place for you. So psychopaths and predators are normalized, and they look normal in these worlds, because not only do they like saying these things, but they're actually looking to do it. So let me just take a micro example. You are a sexual predator who wants to abuse young children sexually. Well, you know that at least some of your time is going to be spent online trying to find someone to abuse. you know that those predators are going to at least try to find someone online. Now, I'm not saying anyone who has an impulse like this is going to do it, because many people who have pedophilic, feelings, they don't act on it because they know it's morally wrong. But to the psychopaths and to other predators, they don't care. And so you know that they're going to spend at least some of their time online, if not all of their time online, because they're anonymous. There are dark places of the web where you can get anonymity. If you spend enough time, you can learn actually how to completely obscure who you are and where you're coming from. And, there are tutorials on YouTube about how to absolutely mask who you are so you can just do whatever you want and no one will be able to find you. And so and then you find innocent 13-year-old boys and girls playing Counter-Strike or Halo or Animal Crossing or something. And one, you get a little bit of pleasure just because you're interacting with them. And two, maybe this can even blossom into an actual, thing. And and people have ideas about these people, like you would be able to notice them, that they would be creepy. I imagine everyone in their mind has an idea of these people as looking like Wormtongue from Lord of the Rings, the Two Towers,
Yeah.
That greasy black hair, pale white face, hunched over, talking with nefarious notions in their breath. These are not the predators. Predators know the primary thing that they have to focus on is likability. Predators are likable. They sometimes are more likable than the average person because they learn the only way I'm going to be able to victimize people is if people don't suspect me. And they spend a lot of time on that. So that's another reason why the gaming world and really all internet corners have a lot of horrible, aggressive, victimizing behavior because of that. Now, is everyone that's doing this sort of thing a psychopathic predator? No, but some of them are undoubtedly. And as someone who is on YouTube, who, psychopaths can comment on YouTube videos just like anyone else, I have been the target of psychopaths and sadists. I can tell. I'm like, oh, something's wrong with that person. That is, why would they go that far? There's to take so much pleasure in trying to get underneath someone's skin for something just so stupid, anyway, so there's that. The other thing here is that we often have these labels like, oh, that woman has daddy issues. Well, there's a lot of dudes out there with mom issues. Take it from me. We don't like to identify that because we live in a sexist society that likes to hammer on women more than men. A lot of men are walking around with massive mom issues, abandonment, trauma, sexual abuse. And
dad issues, by the way.
And dad issues. But mom issues. And when you're a gamer and you have mom issues, then you're going to have a complicated relationship with other women. Another thing is that gamer culture, just over time, since it started out as a young male culture, it's like a locker room in that it started out as a place where boys can be boys and they don't have to worry about not saying that one joke that they want to say. And even though the gamer culture world is definitely more diverse now, way more diverse, and something like, of all the gamers in the world, something like 40% identify as women. You know what I mean? It's like there's a huge, but it's not just like a small section of gamers. It's like a lot of young women and older women, for that matter, are absolutely massive gamers. Because why wouldn't they be? Because games are fun. Like women don't like to have fun. Like, women like to have fun. So as every iteration of diversity enters the gaming world, they have to adapt to the foundation. This is what's wrong in a lot of police departments. Police departments didn't just sprout out of 1989. They sprouted out of 1920. And as every new member enters that locker room, they have to assimilate. And so even though half of the gamer culture, or close to half, are women, they've all had to silence themselves and, put up or even validate what's happening in that locker room to enter that locker room. So that's why, a lot of times what you need to do with these cultures, you have to, if you can, you just need to wipe them off the face of the earth and start over, which of course you can't do often, but anyway. And to some extent, that's what the defund the police force is actually somewhat trying to get at. And there's a lot of different aspects of it, but one of them is that we've tried to change, a particular police department through all these measures, re-education programs, and nothing has worked. So we just need to get rid of the power structure. We need to start over, because the power structure is such that every new member has to adapt to this 1940s version of reality that just gets perpetuated through the power structure. Those who uphold the 1940s power structure move up in the ranks, and those who don't get fired or they quit. And so, military organizations have this as well. And so the gamer culture has this as well. You know what I mean? A similar problem is in nursing, which was a female-dominated group. And when men try to enter the nursing culture, then it can be hard in a similar way. Anyway. Another, just rattle off my list here real quick, is that there is validation culturally. I've already gone over that. There's lack of awareness outside the gaming culture world. The broader society doesn't know what's happening in the gamer culture world. And so there's no outcry, like as a woman, what do you do? Who do you turn to? That people, they might come out of the game, you come out of the gamer world, you're like, I've been sexually harassed all day long. People outside the gaming world would be like, huh? Well, I don't know. Well, just don't participate, just don't do it. Why do you go there? It's like, but I like playing games and I like interacting with other gamers. Anyway, the other reason is that we just live in a generally sexist and misogynistic society. And that's just any part of our society is going to have misogyny and sexism because it's in a misogynistic, sexist society. The other problem here is that systems of power are looking the other way or even supporting it. There are, and Berto, tell me if I'm wrong, but, Microsoft, Xbox, PlayStation, Blizzard, these places are making literally like billions of dollars, and their customers are in this culture. Yeah. And the larger society, the people have, with the money, aren't necessarily incentivized to speak out against this because they could lose. They could basically Blizzard could go out of business if they decided to come out strong against misogyny online, right?
Yeah, it depends what they did, but certainly they would stand to lose a lot of money and audience if they took too strong of a stance in one direction. And the problem is that the executives in a lot of these groups and companies come from this old world. For example, just last week or 2 weeks ago or whatever, a ton of Ubisoft executives were let go because of accusations of sexual harassment and abuse and things like that. These were like top executives, top creative directors, all these types of things. In 2020, it's 2020, people.
So remind people what Ubisoft makes.
Oh, it's another one of like big gaming companies. They make games like Assassin's Creed and things like that.
Yeah, another problem is lack of response from the legal system. If you are being harassed and groomed online, where do you go? One, the groomer and the predator could live in Russia. So what recourse do you have? Is there you call 911. So if you're walking in a park and some predator comes up to your 13-year-old daughter and tries to have sex with her, you call 911. The cops are there. The cops go, is that the guy who did it? Yeah, that's the guy who did it. Okay, bring him in for questioning. There's a system. It's not particularly, streamlined, and it's not without its problems for sure. But let's say you're being groomed by someone from another country or you don't know where they live. You're going to call 911. What do? You call 911. My daughter is being groomed by someone while they're playing Counter-Strike.
Right.
Well, what's their name? I don't know. Well, what's their username? Oh, it's, it's...
Hacksaw XXX2169.
Yeah. And then, okay, I'll write that down. If the police...
That's my username, by the way.
Yeah. If the police... Hacksaw, you said?
Yeah.
Hacksaw
XXX2169.
Oh my God. There is some douchebag in my neighborhood. My neighborhood is a pretty sleepy neighborhood. You've been in my neighborhood. It's pretty, It's like your neighborhood. It's suburban. It's quiet. It's not,
right.
It's not very edgy. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
There's this guy down the hill from me who has a truck that has something like the Dig Bic Club. It's like a big sticker, and then another big thing that says 69 on it, and then another thing that and then I just know it's a dude. Instead of painting his truck, he used what looks to be a Sharpie to like accentuate certain parts of the grill. Anyway, so your username just reminded me of that. But anyway, so even if the police took it seriously, what are they going to do? Okay, they call Counter-Strike. There's this guy, Hacksaw-XX69. Counter-Strike's going to be like, well, here's their info. Even if Counter-Strike, complies, they're going to say, well, here's what we know about them. This is their email address, and they're using Bitcoin, which we can't trace. So we don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Now, there is a way you can actually track, I bet you Anonymous would be able to track down who this person was. It's not like it's impossible to track some of these people down, right? Or you could have regulations on Counter-Strike that makes it so that, and maybe Counter-Strike does. I'm picking on Counter-Strike. I have no idea what the policies are, but you could actually require that Counter-Strike, if they operate within the United States, that the users have registered their ID somehow, or that they actually identify who they are and where they're from, so that you can actually prosecute criminal activity that's actually happening on your game. But most places don't do this. Why? Because the gamers don't want that necessarily. And two, society doesn't care. One, they don't care about women in general. Two, they don't care about children. Three, they don't care about victims. And four, they don't care about the gamer community. It's just like, so if you're a predator, where do you go? Well, you go where society isn't looking. You go where society doesn't care. And you go where the victims are aplenty. And that's what's happening. And if you're a woman, a young woman in the gamer community, God help you. God help you.
True.
Final word, Berto.
Well, if you are playing online, be safe. Make sure that you are not giving your information out to strangers, your personal information. Be mindful, protect yourself psychologically and otherwise. But if you are a guy and you're feeling lonely and you're feeling like you're not getting dates or whatever, it's not just because of COVID. Maybe don't just go to the final straw, like, oh, it's all over, I need to hate women, all these things. Try a few more avenues first. We talked about these a lot before. Things like get out, find interests, find hobbies, find people through those hobbies. That's one of the best things to do. Because once you have common interests with people, all of a sudden you have a lot more foundational base to build upon. Of course, that can be tough during COVID. So that's why you should try to do it online, but do it in an online healthy way instead of online toxic way.
All right. And my final word is, if you see bad behavior online, speak up against it. Do not sit back and allow that to happen. In the same way that you wouldn't allow someone to sexually harass a girl sitting next to you on the bus. If you're sitting on the bus and some predator walks up to a 13-year-old girl sitting next to you on the bus, I would hope you would do something. you would also stick up for people online, particularly if you have power, if you're a male, if you have connections in that corner of the internet. Do something. You want to make a difference in the world? Do something. Don't sit there. Stand up. Solidarity. If we as a population can all agree that we are not going to allow predators and psychopaths and sadists and mean people and misogyny proliferate, we have to stand up. We can't just complain about it. We can't just, judge silently. You have to judge and shame vocally. So protect victims. And if you have been victimized, get support. Protect yourself. Notify power players. Reach out to gamers. There are charismatic gamers who will absolutely stick up for you. There are people who you can turn to who are in the gaming community. I don't know, the PewDiePies of a particular corner of the gaming community. I don't know if PewDiePie is a good example, but who can, what's that guy, H3B3, or what's that kid's name? He's probably our age, but the guy on YouTube, do you know what I'm talking about?
I think I do, but I don't.
Yeah. Anyway, that guy. I'm not in the gamer community, so I mean, do you know of anyone in the gamer community that would actually stick up for victims in the gaming community?
I would think PewDiePie would.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but he probably wouldn't respond to you because he's too big. So,
Right.
just find someone. You do something. If you can. And obviously call the police, because if crimes are happening, then, I don't know, make a report. Maybe something can be done. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself, because
you deserve it.